Hey there, welcome to Sports Talk Live Plus. I'm Sports Director John Scott, joined as always by the Hall of Famer Vic Carucci. Bills hosting the Bengals this Sunday at 1. We'll certainly get into the matchup. Solomon Wilcott's giving his thoughts from the Cincinnati side, and Vic giving insider perspective on Steve Tasker falling short of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Once again, you do not want to miss what Vic has to say. But first, injuries keep piling up. Bills can't get away from those, Vic. Here's the latest injury report from today, and it's A.J. Epinesa popping up with a not practicing with a foot injury. Let's not expect Terrell Bernard, Joey Bosa, or Josh Palmer to play. They haven't practiced this week.
Right.
Encouraging news, Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown limited as Dawkins remains in the concussion protocol. Dalton Kincaid limited, but they added a knee, and there's a knee brace on there as well for Kincaid. So this is the status of things going into Sunday, Vic.
Look, it's not surprising that this deep into the season, your injury list is at its longest or longer than usual. But how many times this year have we been saying, fill in the blank player, this popped up? And it pops up, and the pop-up time is the Thursday, right? Yep. Right. You know kind of what Wednesday looks like, and you get a sense, or coming out of a game. But the one in this case with A.J. Epinesa, just another one that floors me. It's too much of this. Is it just a streak of bad luck?
Well, they also had a walkthrough yesterday, so he has a DNP out of a walkthrough.
What did he walk into?
This is.
Was there a hole in the ground?
Yeah, it's very strange. The Epinesa thing obviously is most problematic because Joey Bosa is not going to play. If A.J. Epinesa has this popping up on a Thursday, an already depleted defensive front on the edge position, now we're looking at legitimately Morgan Fox and Shaq Lawson as guys to have to play alongside with Greg Rousseau, and TJ Sanders has been popping outside, Javon Solomon. I mean, they are depleted.
Yeah, and you desperately need this. You need it all the time. You need it, I mean, at the highest degree against Joe Burrow. I mean, this is the guy that you better have your best pass rush going. I'm not saying they won't find something within the group they have, but the chances of that happening minus those names that we mentioned are decreased.
100%. All right, now this is a wild story. Darius Slay not reporting to the Bills after being claimed Wednesday. Apparently he's contemplating retirement. To get Slay on the roster and claim him off of waivers, the Bills had to release Jamarcus Ingram, who now has been claimed by the Texans this afternoon. Yeah. So now we have a situation, Vic, where the Bills are trying to bolster the depth at cornerback by getting Slay, who is a proven veteran, going to be 35 on New Year's Day. He's maybe not even playing football again, and now you're going to be down a cornerback because you're not getting Jamarcus Ingram back.
Yeah, this one, of course, really needs some explaining, and we'll see if maybe we hear from Brandon Beane tomorrow, the media does, and we do. But from the standpoint of why you go after Darius Slay, of course it makes great sense, given the issues that the Bills have had on the back end, the need for that veteran depth as you're going through the stretch run, as you're thinking about the postseason. And I thought it was a wonderful pickup, but the full extent of knowing what he might want to do and what I was hearing around the league today from some people was that this contemplation of retirement was in play while he was with the Steelers as things were going before they played the Bills where it seemingly hit rock bottom for them. To move on from Jamarcus Ingram, okay, now the fact that you've compromised your depth additionally doesn't mean you can't fill that body. I don't know that Ingram's departure is a major crevice in the whole situation when it comes to depth. However, just in terms of the homework and the background, was something missed? Did they get some bad info that the guy was, or did not hear, like some others say they have around the league, that this guy was thinking retirement?
Added to the list of reasons you could be critical of Brandon Beane with this season in particular, if this plays out and unfolds where Darius Slay ultimately is not on the Bills. He wasn't going to be part of the game plan, certainly against the Bengals here, but the secondary is certainly going to be tested by the Bills because Joe Burrow returning from turf toe on Thanksgiving after missing 9 games, and he looked like the Joe Burrow of old in beating the Ravens here. How big of a dynamic swing does this make the Bengals? Because Joe Flacco was fine. He was pretty good in relief. but he's not Joe Burrow. How much does this elevate their offense with just him being back?
Huge. It is, again, this is the same conversation you have if Josh Allen were missing from the Bills lineup, and now they get Josh Allen back, that kind of thing. And I know people don't even want to contemplate the absence of Allen, but the Bengals and their fan base did not want to contemplate the absence of Burrow. That happened. Now you get him back, and he shows that he's coming back to form. Still dealing with that injury. It required surgery, that toe issue that he had. And I know he's doing like in-game shoe change and all that.
We'll see if plate in his shoe.
Plate in the shoe. I mean, he is pushing it. And there was a lot of talk that why would you do this? The season's pretty much lost. Why do you want to come back and maybe risk additional damage? And he said, look, I'm getting paid to play this game, this kid's game, and I'm getting paid a lot of money, and my teammates rely on me. There was like no thinking on his part of doing anything except coming back.
Oh, by the way, the AFC North is a disaster, and there's no reason that says that he can't help elevate them to at least pushing to make the postseason with another division
title.
There's
a chance.
There is a chance. Bengals, we know, 2 high-profile wide receivers. They're Burrow's top targets. Jamar Chase, once again, one of the best in the NFL. T. Higgins was out with a concussion. He looks like he is going to be back once again here. It's not often. You could even say maybe the Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, but that's not even the same stratosphere here. T. Higgins and Jamar Chase as a 1-2 punch is something the Bills, they really aren't going to see and haven't seen to this point.
As good as any, right up there with, say, the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, if you think about receiver combinations, these two guys are lethal and in most cases uncoverable. Somebody's going to be open, one of the two, on any pass play or every pass play. I do think the challenge would have been great if the Bills secondary were playing well up to this point, consistently well. And now I have some real questions as to how this is going to work out, because here's the difference between this setup and what the Bills faced against Pittsburgh. Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow as opposed to Aaron Rodgers. Joe Burrow can make those throws, make those plays, make those receivers effective. An effective quarterback playing for the Steelers might have made that an entirely different game, but we know how it worked out, and we know what Aaron Rodgers and his receivers couldn't do. This is going to be a very different story with Burrow and as dynamic a receiving duo as the NFL has.
Christian Benford, the AFC Defensive Player of the Week, the fumble return for a touchdown, the interception against the Steelers. He's been shadowing, so maybe it's him versus Jamar Chase. It's a really good battle there as Benford's elevated his play. Then that leaves Tre'Davious White and Max Hairston to deal with T. Higgins there. The Bills, amazingly enough, maybe not realize this, #1 pass defense in the entire NFL. Statistically, we understand the eye test has shown us some of their warts at times.
Yeah, it is. The stats don't lie on that. But as you said, on the eye test and on the vulnerability, and yes, some people have stepped up in a big way. I thought Tre'Davious White had his best game of this season as a Bill for sure against the Steelers. We've seen Cole Bishop take his game to a high level. Max Hairston, there's certainly been some flashes. His snaps were somewhat limited against the Steelers. He was coming off that concussion. We'll see how and if that changes with the divvying up of time between him and Tre'Davious White. But yes, we finally saw Christian Benford have the kind of game that his revised contract would warrant. But this is still going to be a massive challenge, even when you're covering these two guys well, right? Chase and Higgins, they'll make a play. I mean, they're going to do it. Even they will do those with the guy hanging all over him type of catch.
Yeah, we focus a lot on the passing game. The Bengals rank 30th in the league in running the football. We know the Bills' run defense outside of this past game in Pittsburgh has had some problems as well. Chase Brown, though, I'll say it like this. Tale of two halves of this season. First 6 games averaging just over 33 yards per game, 83 plus now in the last 6 games here. And we don't have to tell you the difference a running game can make for a prolific passing attack.
Right, and this is where, as you list keys to this game, the Buffalo run defense that showed up against Pittsburgh, and it really has been in place since the second half of the Houston loss, it has got to step up here. You cannot let Joe Burrow have that and that offense have that dimension in play, because it's going to compromise what you want to do against the pass. If you're worrying about this guy and worrying about that offensive line of the Bengals getting those holes, Chase Brown can break some runs, and he will have his share. But in terms of the Bills, are we seeing a total remake of, or I shouldn't say remake, but have they come back to the place that they needed to be all along with the way they're playing run defense? I don't know that a game and a half really proves that. This is going to have to prove it as well.
Shaq Thompson, I think, is a big key at the middle linebacker position for the way that their run defense and defense overall has improved. Bengals defense stinks. I mean, we could run down the list of all the categories that they're 30, 31st, 32nd in the league. I got it right here. The lowest amount of yards they've allowed in a game is 327. That was to the Cleveland Browns week 1. The Cleveland Browns were not a very good offense. They're still not a good offense. They've allowed 500 yards plus 3+ times.
Yeah.
I mean, Trey Hendrickson's not going to play. This is for the taking for the Bills to score a lot of points, do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, the only area where the Bills could hurt themselves offensively is if they hurt themselves, is if they're making the mistakes, turnovers, penalties, missed assignments, incorrect routes, whatever. If the mindset isn't right for this, now going back to that injury list, this is where the possible absence of a Dalton Kincaid or his compromised physical self could be an issue here, because you need him if you're going to get into a points fest fight, which is what this game has written all over it.
Yeah, I think shootout is absolutely where we are headed on Sunday, even with the Bills defense showing some improvements.
Right.
The Bengals defense actually showing some improvements against Baltimore on Thanksgiving here. I just think it's two high-powered offenses that are going to go toe-to-toe with two of the best quarterbacks in football. So that's our rundown of the matchup between the Bills and the Bengals. When we return, Vic's chat with Solomon Wilcots, giving us perspective from the other side. You're watching Sports Talk Live Plus here on WGRZ Plus. Welcome back here to Sports Talk Live Plus. Time to get some thoughts from someone on the other side of the matchup this week. Vic catching up with his SiriusXM colleague and longtime broadcaster, Solomon Wilcots.
Yeah, and a former NFL safety, spent most of his career with the Bengals. And we started the chat off in the obvious place, Joe Burrow. Considering how much time Joe Burrow missed and the nature of that toe injury that led to surgery, how sustainable is the performance that he gave on Thanksgiving? Is that something that he can come back to steadily and especially, of course, Sunday against the Bills?
Yes, I think it's sustainable for him because Joe tends to get better the more that he plays. So in the early part of a season or in the early part of when he gets on the field, it tends to be the worst that you'll see. Last year, they finished off the season winning 5 straight games because he was playing as well as any quarterback in the league, if not better. And so that's who he is. The more looks he gets at a defense, the more reps, the more time on task that he gets, his game tends to elevate. So I expect him to get better. Now, the elements around him on offense has gotten better. For the first half of the season, the run game wasn't working. Now they've had over 100 yards rushing as a team anyway, and each of their last 5 games are 5 of their last 6 contests. So they're doing that better. The offensive line has gotten better in terms of overall protection. And remember, against the Ravens, he was playing without T. Higgins. So now he's going to have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. They'll be back on the field at the same time. It's been the last 2 games, they have not been on the field at the same time. So when you have those 2 guys and a Joe Burrow and Chase Brown now getting it going in the run game, one might say the opportunity for this offense to play better than they have all season long, Vic, that's what's out in front of them.
So where the Buffalo Bills showed great improvement against the Steelers, and actually it started in the second half of their very disappointing loss at Houston, is run defense. And it obviously held the Steelers, stoned them to 58 rushing yards. That, to me, seems to be their best formula against an explosive offense like the Bengals. How do you see that matchup?
That is, I'm telling you, I think, the Buffalo Bills run defense was surprised, to be honest with you, because there's been some weeks where it hasn't been good. We know they've had some injuries on the interior part of their defensive line and at the second level of the defense. And so now it's gotten so much better in terms of what they did. you go into Pittsburgh, and when Sean McDermott says, look, we need to out physical this team. We're going to keep hitting them in the mouth. We're going to see who quits. I don't know that I've ever been able to point to a time where a Pittsburgh Steelers team at home in Pittsburgh in front of their fan base was out physicaled by anyone. And I certainly hadn't seen that under a Mike Tomlin-led team. So that was something that caught the entire National Football League off guard. And now it has people in Pittsburgh not knowing who they are. It's sort of stripping them of their identity. But that's a huge thing for the Buffalo Bills to be able to say that we went into Pittsburgh and we were more physical than they were. And I know that resonates with the Cincinnati Bengals because they're used to playing the Steelers twice a year. They know how difficult it is to do that. And so I think they know that they're facing a formidable opponent week 14 against the Buffalo Bills.
Given the explosiveness of the Bengals offense and given, I guess, the state of their defense, which might not have their best pass rusher, Trey Hendrickson, and, in terms of just its overall struggles, I feel like this game could be that shootout that I think we've seen before. And yeah. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, is that the feel you have? And are the Bengals at a point where they're not going to blink in that setting, even on the road?
Yeah, I think they're kind of used to it over the last couple of years where the defense hasn't been what they expect. Joe Burrow's been good. Even when Joe Flacco came in this year, he's been good. So over the last couple of years, Vic, they've scored 30 or more points 13 times. They're 7-6 in those games. So they lost nearly half of those games. One more, and that was just the most recent one against the Baltimore Ravens. So they're used to playing in these kinds of games now. The offense is used to playing in these games where they know the defense isn't going to get stopped. They're just asking them to get maybe one more, to help seal the deal. But Joe Burrow, the offense, they come in knowing, hey, they got to put up a lot of points. Remember, they lost a game earlier this year against Chicago at home where they scored 42 points and lost the game, right? So they scored 38 points against the Jets and lost that game. So they know that just because you get 30 doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win. They feel like they've got to go full pedal to the metal, right? And try to get as many points as they can. And I could see that kind of game materializing when you have a game where you have Josh Allen on one end, Joe Burrow on the other. It's not hard to imagine that a game could go in that direction.
All right, we're listening to Solomon Wilcox's takes on this. And John, I think the thing that stands out to me was when he talked about this team being used to, this offense especially, but this team being used to having a bad defense and having to overcompensate offensively to deal with it. So they're used to it, home or away, and I think that is one of the big stories I think we got to look at for this game.
Take the over. That's what I'm going to say. Take the over in that one. Coming up, Steve Tasker falling short of the Hall of Fame once again. Vic letting us inside the process, so he knows a lot about it. And what's next for Tasker's hopes to finally get to Canton. You're watching Sports Talk Live Plus here on WGRZ Plus. Welcome back here to Sports Talk Live Plus. Here is a look at the AFC standings entering Week 14. Patriots atop the conference heading into their bye week at 11-2. Broncos, Jags, Ravens remaining atop their divisions. You see the Bills there, the 7th spot there. We understand they lost to the Texans, so they fall at any point here. Houston nipping at their heels. Steelers, and there are the Chiefs with another do-or-die game. They're facing the Houston Texans this week. Vic, what are your thoughts here as you just kind of look at the overall landscape, especially when it comes to the Bills?
Yeah, I'm still of the mind that it is such a wide-open conference that none of these teams ahead of the Bills should in any way intimidate the chances of the Bills, making a run. First of all, they got to get there, I know that, and in the 7th spot, that's no lock. But I do think that they are formidable with any of these clubs, and that includes the Patriots. We're going to get the litmus test when they go to Foxborough in a couple of weeks. Broncos, yeah, real good defense. But Jacksonville, Baltimore, we've seen Chargers. again, they can go toe-to-toe, and I'm not convinced the Colts are even going to be in the playoff picture.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the Houston Texans and the Colts are going to probably flip-flop by the time this thing is all said and done. We're finishing the show with an insider's perspective you'll only find right here. Steve Tasker, not among the finalists from the senior category for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Vic, you're not part of that group that decides that, but you are a Hall of Fame voter here, so you understand the process overall. Please give us some insights and thoughts on this latest attempt falling short for Steve Tasker.
Sure, and it does localize itself. Even though I wasn't on, or I'm not on the senior committee that boiled down this list to a final 3, and of course Steve wasn't on that, the fact that he was, and my role is that of an advocate for him, and I know he had some other advocates for sure, but to help sort of shepherd the process and make sure these senior voters who do their own research.
And how many of them are there?
So there was a panel of, I want to say, nine or so.
Okay.
And it's called, there's like a clearinghouse to reduce, to help bring this list from what it was. So it went from 50, Steve was there at 50 plus, then 30 plus, because ties are included. So those are really truly supposed to be smaller numbers, but ties get thrown into the bin. And then it went down to 9. And Steve made that semifinal 9 list. And at each step of the way, the interest in him intensified. I felt from that committee, from the feedback I was getting. I also want to say that Mark Gaughan, former Hall of Fame voter who championed Steve's cause from modern era through his, all the way through. But I've been part of the voting, having replaced Mark from Buffalo, and then getting input from Bill Polian, who was on that senior committee. And he was the guy who acquired Steve off waivers by the Bills, Marv Levy, and he told the story to me about Northwestern having seen Steve there when they were in the United States Football League Chicago Blitz team back in the USFL days. And the Buffalo Bills themselves, all the information they were able to provide, video and so forth, all this material that we were able to kind of gather together and pass along. Be the advocate and then hope the voting would go in that direction. So I think it's a good sign that he made it to the 9. And I don't guarantee that it means something next year, but I do think there can be momentum.
And the challenge with Steve throughout the entire process, he's a one of one, right?
Yes.
I mean, he's a one of one as not a return guy, but a special team specialist.
Right, not a position guy, and that's the argument. How often is he on the field? The argument that's made is he's so impactful every time he was on the field.
Well, we'll see it again next year. Bills-Bengals, 1 o'clock Sunday at Highmark Stadium. With Vic, I'm John. Enjoy the game.